previous video in this series, we saw how to set up 4 different tilapia production scenarios using the same cages. In this video, we look at comparing and combining these strategies to find an optimum solution for your needs. So, once you have experimented with different strategies for your cages, you can compare them on the sheet with the tab name 5-comparison. The first section summarises and compares the key annual results from the 4 previous strategy sheets. For these calculations, you can decide whether to include or exclude short-term interest payments on fry and feed purchases via a yes/no drop-down. We will be looking in more detail at setting up the financial parameters later in this video series, so for the moment it is suggested that you leave this on no. The key thing to note in this table is that it assumes all the available cages are used in each strategy. From this you can see which strategy achieves the highest production in terms of kilograms of fish, and which yields the highest income, and which the best return after deduction of fry and feed costs. These do not always align, so the highest production may not be the strategy that provides the best financial returns. A chart adjacent to the first table just visualises the 2 key financial indicators, total income and total income less fry and feed costs. The model then assumes that you might wish to combine 2 or more of these strategies, e.g. to mix a production of small and large fish. The way to do this is in the following table, where you can allocate your cages, or cage groups if you are working at that level, to the chosen strategies. If you wish, you can allocate them all to one strategy, or you can choose a mix. When the number of cages you have allocated in the white cells adds up to the number of cages specified on the 0 Start Here page, you will get a green OK adjacent to the allocation row. The data below multiplies the annual per cage data by the number of cages to give a total for all cages, together with some analysis of the contribution of each strategy to the total production and earnings. A chart adjacent to this table helps to visualize the contribution each cage strategy makes to your overall gross income. In this example, Strategy 2 provides the greatest income, followed by Strategy 4 and then 1. Below the combined strategy table is a more complete financial projection for the combined outcome. This uses more detailed cost data, which will need to be adjusted to match your situation. We look at those settings in a later video. Up to this point, the financial analysis just considers income from sales and expenditure on fry and feed in order to give an indication of gross operating margin. However, it is clearly possible for a farm to show a positive gross operating margin, but not be financially viable once other costs are taken into account. The purpose of the final section on this sheet is therefore to give some indication as to whether the strategies would yield sufficient return to provide an overall profit on the operation. The spreadsheet does not attempt to generate a realistic set of accounts, e.g. balance sheet and trading and profit and loss. Rather, it produces some financial indicators using management accounting methods and greatly simplified assumptions, but useful for comparing between different scenarios. The layout is that of a trading profit and loss account, but it brings in considerations of investment costs through the inclusion of depreciation and interest payments on loans. Short-term loans such as overdraft to fund feed and fry are optionally included in the variable operating costs by selecting Yes under Include the cost of short-term credit for fry and feed at the top of the worksheet. Interest payments on long-term loans, not including any repayment of the capital, are a kind of fixed operating cost. However, to assess the underlying viability of a business, it is often preferable to exclude the cost of financing. hence the option of including or excluding interest on short-term loans. In this financial summary, the long-term interest payments are excluded from the fixed cost section, but included immediately below for the calculation of annual return, which also includes depreciation on fixed assets. Note that income tax is excluded as that is calculated on the final profit of a business. There is also no consideration of the time value of money here or the long-term return on initial investment costs. Adjacent to the data table is a waterfall chart which displays these figures to show the income to the enterprise as the leftmost bar, and then how that income is spent, leading to the final bar at the right, which represents profit, or if negative, loss before tax. A final chart displays the costs as a pie chart. This is to help focus on those costs which are more significant and might be addressed through strategic or managerial steps, such as improving the feed conversion efficiency to better control feed costs. A final section on this sheet calculates several other financial indicators that can be useful for comparison between scenarios. These are taken from Ngugi et al. 2007. The break-even price is the average selling price needed to cover either just the variable production costs or the total costs. The break-even yield is the quantity of fish that needs to be produced at the actual average selling price before a margin can start to be made. Finally, the margins per cubic metre of cage volume are calculated. As stated earlier, the values of these results will be highly dependent on the quality of the cost data entered into the advanced setup pages, which we start to explore in the next video.